Well, it is February 15th, 2024, as we sit down with Myles and Mary Yanta. Guys, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Well, thank
You both look great.
Thanks.
You're both healthy and happy. And
Correct.
Reasonably.
Myles, I've got you at 75 years old now.
Yes.
Right, and Mary, you're 68.
Counting down to 69 in a few days.
In
Yeah.
a week.
Oh, well, that's great. Goes by fast, doesn't
It
it?
does. It does.
Yeah. Well, what's been your secret to get by this long and still be happy and healthy and
Well, I think
functioning?
some of it is good genes. I'm very fortunate that I have had my father's family and my mother's family all healthy. Unfortunately, I lost my mother when she was young at 47. However, and I was 5 and my sisters were 10 and 12. However, it was a heart thing, and back then they couldn't fix it. But we all have very healthy, except for orthopedic type things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm very healthy. So, new knees, lumbar, fusion, cataracts. I'm not going to have the shoulder surgery, they say. So I just rehabbed it. And I have 3 children who keep me going, and grandchildren. And the daughter, all of them are very
The grandchildren keep you really going.
Yeah.
That's going, yes. So
It'll
anyway,
keep you
that's-
young or kill you. Probably won't.
You let it, though.
They keep us busy.
You
so.
say yes.
Well, let's start with your life story. Tell me, first of all, Mary, tell me where you were born.
Carrollton, Illinois, little town we used to say in the middle of a cornfield, not too far from here. And my mother from Michigan, and my father from Columbia, Illinois. And she was German, Swiss, and French, and he was mostly German, and loved that little town. And it was just a sweet little town. We lived a block off the square. Dad was an attorney, and everyone knew everyone. So you always had to be careful, because when you drove around, you had to wave to everybody, and always be very careful, because everyone knew what you were doing, and they were keeping an eye out on you. And then when Mother passed away, I had so many people fill in. So I had all the ladies in town, the ladies in the church, and as well as my mother's family and my father's family. So it was a wonderful, and my older sisters, who were 5 and 7 years older than I was. So wonderful. So, and let's see.
So you like Carrollton?
Oh, I love Carrollton.
Yeah, and your dad was an attorney there.
Yes.
Yeah. Why would he have settled in Carrollton?
Well, that's a good question. He went to school at Washington University from Columbia, Illinois. His father had a general store, and their little byline was they sold everything from a needle to a threshing machine. And his sisters, he was the youngest of the four older sisters, and the sisters did things like took care of they had the flour and the sugar and all that. They had the fabrics and all that. And then my dad says that he helped his father build cars. And so it would come in a box, and next thing you know, he would build a car. And so he learned all these different things.
Like the kind of car you drive, or just a
Yes.
toy
A
car?
car you drive.
They would build that on their own.
Yes. So this general store had everything you would have. And he sold things to, who's the guy in Alton who's so tall?
Oh, Robert Wadlow.
Wadlow.
Oh, yeah. The
Yeah.
Alton Giant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did. So he met him. But then my father's father told him to get an education, all of the family, including the women, to get an education, and because then no one can take it away from you. Because he said there could be a fire and I could lose this general store. But if you have an education and it's here, then no one can take it from you. So that's what Dad did. And he went to Washington University for undergrad and law school, and he just stayed there, and he loved it. And then I can't remember exactly why, he went to University of Michigan for something. And the story goes that he was somewhat up high and saw this woman walking by, and it was my mother. And he said, I'm going to marry that woman. So he saw her down there and met up with her somehow. And I think she was either dating or maybe even engaged to someone else. But somehow or another, he convinced her, and they moved back to Carrollton. Let's see, I don't know exactly all the story, but he was in the Army. lieutenant colonel in the JAG, the Judge Advocate General, which is the lawyer part of it. And they moved, and he came back to that area because it was beautiful, and it was on the river, and it reminded Mother, I think, of Michigan, and they said it was a good practice. And he was told the practice was on the river, but Carrollton isn't really on the river.
Yeah,
but
close
back then,
enough.
you can't Google and you can't tell exactly what's where. So he had the law practice. He also had an insurance bonding and abstracting company. And then he, over the years, was legal counsel for 4 banks and was well as on the board of all those banks. So the local banks, the State Bank of Eldred, the Bank of Calhoun County, the Greene County National Bank, and there's another one I can't think right now. The 4th bank, Bank of Calhoun County. I don't think I said that one.
So he was quite an accomplished guy, and your grandfather must have been quite the businessman too,
Right.
to be building cars. You got to know what you're doing to
That's
put a car. Although we're probably talking Model Ts. Is it going back
so,
that far?
yeah, right.
Probably so. Oh, that's fascinating. And Myles, where were you born?
I was actually born in Wharton, Texas, where that's the place where Dan Rather was born.
Oh, yeah.
But he's like 10, 15 years older than I was. And I grew up in Runge, Texas, even smaller than Carrollton, Illinois. It's about 70 miles southeast of San Antonio. And my dad had a ranch, farm, whatnot. And I was the oldest of 4 children. And they're all still around. They're all 3 mostly in Texas still. But I guess then my dad went to college at Texas A&M and went off to the war, was a bombardier and navigator in B-24s, about 44 to the end of the war, and he stayed on in the reserves, and actually he retired as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, just like her dad was a JAG in the Army. But before I forget, you need to tell Doug what he did during in Nuremberg.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the counselors at the Nuremberg trials.
Oh,
in like
really?
1946 or so.
Yeah.
Pretty good thing. Looks good on a resume.
Yeah, I would say representing the United States.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
He's one of the junior attorneys, which I thought was darn cool.
Well, how did they find him to do that?
I'm not sure.
They needed a lot of legal representation. So, but anyway, and then I went to high school, public high school, that's even smaller, much smaller than hers in Carrollton, and then went off to college at Texas A&M, where my dad went. And after that, I went to medical school in Galveston, University of Texas Medical Branch for 4 years. Graduated from there in 1975. Interviewed for a medicine internship, internal medicine, and I matched right here at Barnes. So I came up to St. Louis in 1975 through 78, and I was at the big house, back before it was Barnes Jewish. It was Barnes Jewish, and then, I don't know if you're from here, but you might remember until 99 or so, it was kind of 2 separate entities. And then afterward, I went to Boston to do a subspecialty fellowship in pulmonary disease.
With the Peter Bent Brigham.
At the Peter Bent Brigham, now the Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard School of Public Health, and Harvard Medical School. And I owed the Air Force 4 years. And I was I said, when I moved away, had my stuff in a U-Haul truck going to Boston from St. Louis. I looked in the rearview mirror and said, I'll never see St. Louis again. Guess what? The Air Force sent me to Scott for 4 years.
Right back to where you came
right to back where I had been for
And I went the other direction.
3 years.
West.
You went to
I said, I'm never
to
coming
Oakland.
back. I don't want to live in the Midwest.
And I went, I came back and had 4 years in the Air Force at Scott Air Force Base, which was wonderful, and then stayed in the area to practice medicine. So in Alton since 84. We've been in our home since 1984 in Alton.
Oh. And still here. You must have gotten through your probationary period and everything.
Well,
here we are 40 years later.
Yeah, it was a challenge. I said the real reason I wanted to stay because I didn't want to give up Choice Symphony tickets.
Oh yeah,
that
once
was
you get that.
was a line I
Yeah.
used to say. I said seriously, I said a little bit.
Yeah.
But what was it like growing up in this small little town in Texas? You said your dad had a ranch. What was that like?
Well, it was not that big. It's bigger now. My brother owns the land now. It's like about 690 acres or so. But Daddy farmed some and ranched some. And then he also, because times were hard, there was a drought in the 50s. There was a drought all over this country. It was kind of a redo of the Dust Bowl almost of the 1930s. And it was pretty bad. And so he actually found a job working at something new called a uranium mill. And they processed uranium for nuclear power and stuff.
Oh, great. That's not dangerous for anything.
No, it caused him to lose some hair back here years ago. And he decided to do he applied to be an operator, and they said, Ed, you've got a college degree, you're older, you're a boss, you've been in the Army, in the military. They said, we'd like to make you a shift supervisor or something. And then he became the plant supervisor. But he always, his number one love, other than kids and wife and all that, cattle. So
cattle.
He always had to go back and look at the girls every night, the cattle.
He figured out one of the things was how steep the it could be for the cattle, because if it's too steep, they don't like it.
Yeah,
They would reclaim the land.
They had to. That was a lot later though. But they had to dig. They had all these kind of open pit mines and stuff. But they had to reclaim them, so they would grade them so the cattle could walk up them. And apparently there are some people that know psychology of cattle, how steep an angle. They're not goats or sheep, so they can't go like that. They can go, and they would. He told them how much they could go up. They put grass on there and hoped it rained enough, and that was his job toward the end. And then every evening he could get back home to my mother, and probably my little sister was still there, maybe my other brother, and then get back to look at the cows.
And so what kind of things did you do as a kid growing up in that environment?
I did a lot of, I had to milk cows, milk cow for us when I was pretty young. What I did was did some gardening. My mother was never a big gardener, and so Daddy had us do the vegetable garden and all. Mother did not like flowers, so my brother and I, one of my brothers and I, did some flower gardening. I had to take care of hogs, too. We also had hogs. That's a smelly job.
Yeah.
And we also did, I hauled a lot of hay as a teenager, and that's a hard job, and it's hot all the time. My father planted cotton when I was very young, and that's not a place to grow cotton. And I had to learn to pick it, and that was just brutal. That was awful. And on probably an August day in South Texas, just rattlesnakes, black widow spiders, heat. And then, let's see, what else did I do? Like hauling hay is a lot of work. Oh, and building barbed wire fences. I built a lot of barbed wire.
A lot of fun and games down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bet it taught you a work ethic, though.
Oh, yeah.
You're probably in great shape.
Well, I was. Nobody worked harder than Daddy, I don't think. He was always in good shape.
Rattlesnakes give you trouble down there?
No, I killed some because rather than step on them, when I was young. They're not as many. No, they didn't. One of them bit one of our dogs when I was young. One of my dogs, and he died.
Oh.
A little,
that was traumatic.
Jack Russell Terrier. Yeah, it was kind of very sad. So we got a new one just like him a few years later, and that one lasted a long time. But
And they're all named.
Bingo. Like B-I-N-G.
You named every dog the same
No. My Bingo 1 and Bingo 2. No, we didn't.
Oh, gotcha.
I was a little more original or imaginative than one name. Like George Foreman,
that.
all of his kids named George.
Right. Mary, what kind of things did you do as a young child?
Well, let's see. Did a lot of just around the little town. We rode bicycles. I would go up to the little town so I could ride the bicycle to the library, get my bicycle basket full of books and bring them home, and go up to my dad's office. And the girls always worked in the office, and go back and talk to my dad. And everyone around the square knew us. And there was the dime store, and then there was the drug store, and it was just a sweet little town. And
sounds like kind of a Norman Rockwell existence.
It was just
It is.
yeah.
And school, did you enjoy school?
Love school. School was wonderful. It was just I would ride my bike to and from school until I got able to drive, and did a little carpooling. And I would, of course, we were three girls, so we were all cheerleaders, and two of us were homecoming queen.
Oh, was that you one of those?
I was.
You were the homecoming queen in high school?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and so, yeah, and then in every club and all those kinds of things. In a little town, you can be a big fish in a little pond. So, and I just had to study hard and all that.
What kind of duties did you have as homecoming queen?
Oh, nothing. Ride in the parade.
Yeah,
and
look
wave.
good, comb your hair, and
Yeah.
It's almost like a government job. I should say.
Look like a convertible and just, go on the parade and wave.
Well, that had to be fun, though.
Oh, gosh.
What were your sisters like?
Oh, they were older, and they were I admired them because they knew all about fashion, and they knew all about, they traveled, and they did all these different things. So they were my mentors, and they were really wonderful too. They helped me a lot. They took me shopping, and one of my sisters she would put me in the dressing room, and she'd bring all the clothes in, and I'd try them all on, and she'd pick out what I would wear. And I had glasses because in the 4th grade I had what did I have? I had the mumps, and it turned to scarlet fever. And then I was at home, and my dad didn't want me to go to the hospital. I had to have an IV, and so they read books to me, and then I couldn't. Then I had my vision went. I had to have glasses. So I had all these different glasses, and they would pick out. We'd go to my uncle. My mother's brother was an ophthalmologist, and they would pick out the glasses, and I would wear these crazy glasses. But some of the kids were not so always friendly. I was called Four Eyes in high school.
But you got the last laugh when you're homecoming queen.
Yes, exactly. My pictures in the high school yearbook went from a girl with braces and glasses and short hair, gradually losing the braces, growing the hair, losing the glasses, and finally looking better to the senior year.
But there might have been some awkward years in there at some point.
It was awkward along the way.
And what was your mother like? You said she died at a young age, but what was she like?
Yes, I don't know a lot about her. I was 5 when she passed away, so what I know of her is more from stories, of what I hear from others and pictures. And they say she was lovely, beautiful, sweet, loved her family and her children more than anything, and smart. She went to college and was a dental hygienist, went to the University of Michigan, but she also taught school. And I'm not sure exactly how all that fit in. Maybe that was before college. I don't know exactly how that all worked, the timing. But she had a heart problem, and they couldn't fix that. And my father took her to Mayo Clinic and all the places all over St. Louis, and they couldn't do a surgery. But she was gentle, loving. She was small, and we had a chair in the house that fit her, and they would say that was mother's chair. So, and she started in our little town, AAUW, American Association of University Women, because she was very proud of that. So Dad was very, he wanted his daughters to be ladies. So he taught us to be ladies, and he wanted us to be, so he took us to the symphony and the ballet and all those kinds of things. So tried to do that for us.
Well, how do you deal with that when you're 5 years old and you lose your mother? That had to just be devastating.
It was hard. It was very hard. Yep.
She had some very nice aunts. So this older sisters of her dad.
They were older, and they had married young, had their children early, and Dad had married later and had his children later. So they were available. So they would come and stay for like a month. And they would sew and bake and fill the freezer and be there for her birthdays. And so they were wonderful for us as a family.
So even though you didn't have a mother, you still had women raising you.
Lots of people who filled in.
A lot of mother figures.
Very grateful for that.
Yeah.
And all those ladies in the town and the church and my sisters.
Yeah. Myles, what was your mother like?
Mother was she was very demanding, very sweet, though, loving. As I said, I was the oldest of 4 children, and she enjoyed cooking. She was a good cook. She kept a good house. She always wanted us to be on the straight and narrow, and I think we were back then. My brothers and my sister and I were, I think, pretty good kids. We were all good students. well, especially the next brother who's her age, we were really good students. And then not so much for Zach, the next one, and Tanya, my little sister, but they're all good. Daddy was, a kind of a no-nonsense, tough guy, been in the war. Grew up, both of those were Depression kids. Mm-hmm. So they were, and your dad actually was already grown by the time of the Depression. So he didn't get to experience all the...
And Dad was like a mother to us.
Yeah.
He was loving, kind. Mm-hmm. And he filled in for Mother as well.
Mm-hmm. But they taught us to work hard, and they were really good when our kids came along. Then they loved to see our children, and they're grandkids now. And unfortunately, our 3 kids were some of the younger grandkids. So by the time that our oldest child, who's 38 now, came around, my mother's arthritis was so bad she basically couldn't do any big-time babysitting. She'd come and hang around, visit us, and go to a famous bar at Alton Square Mall and shop.
Well, they have to do that too.
Yeah, back in the day. But she loved being...
Winter clothes to Texas that she didn't really need, but she loved to shop.
High-heeled shoes that she never wore, and they're still in her closet at home.
She loved it.
She loved it.
Can you return them now? I guess Famous is not around.
They're Famous isn't around, and there's no Macy's there anymore. That's gone, so... Anyway.
Did you play sports as a kid growing up?
I was not a really good athlete. I played 2 years of basketball in this junior and senior year in high school, and that was about it. They said I could jump pretty well. I don't think I was that athletic, so. And the rest of the family, my 2 brothers were pretty good football players. And my sister was, of course, the queen of everything. She was the drum major in high school. And all of us went to the same college, went to Texas A&M. So,
why did you all go to the same place?
Well, my dad, it's a classic. There's probably a lot of people my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, that went to A&M and said, my dad said I could go to college anywhere I wanted as long as it's A&M. That's my daddy said that too. When I was about 16 or 17, he says, well, looks like I know where I'm going. And,
well, it's a pretty good place to go, though.
Yeah, it was good. And it was way smaller than that's one of the biggest colleges in the country.
Yeah, I saw it's like 70,000 kids.
It's huge, yeah. But they can't win any football games, so.
No, well, a tough conference.
Yeah, it's a tough conference. There's always Alabama.
Yeah. Did you get in any trouble as a kid, ever?
Not really. Got thrown out of the drive-in movie one time when I was about a senior because we weren't drinking or anything. We were just making too much noise, and it was upsetting the people in the cars behind us. There were, I don't know how many kids clambering over this car with an open top. So they said, oh, and my mother, dad were mortified. Said, we didn't get in that much trouble. It wasn't a police report, but that was probably the worst thing that happened.
Just got you were there with friends, obviously.
Friends, yeah. We were watching some, I don't even know what the movie was. I was probably a junior in high school.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
But you were making quite a ruckus that night.
Well, we were making noise that the old people sitting behind us didn't want it, and some had probably kids and grandkids wanted to hear, and instead they couldn't because those boxes they used to have hang in your window. It's awful. And they didn't appreciate our rowdiness, I guess.
Well, the authorities didn't put up with a lot of nonsense back then either.
No.
You got thrown out and you didn't sue anybody. And
I didn't sue anybody. And the other big things, we had little country dance halls down there. You remember, because you've gone to some of those with us. And it's like different shooting clubs and things like that. The Turn Varian or whatever, or church, they're big. Everybody there, they had bands, and sometimes it was country western, sometimes rock and roll, sometimes it was Tex-Mex or Tejano music later. But everybody slow danced in a giant circle. It was the funniest thing. She couldn't believe it. And,
it's like backwards and the girls go.
Yeah, they're all around in a big circle. Said, who decides if it's clockwise or counterclockwise from above? So, but I got to take her to some of those, and actually with my parents when they were still doing pretty well. Like for a New Year's Eve dance some years ago.
Mary, did you get in any trouble in Carrollton, or were you a perfect angel?
Well, I wasn't allowed to go to do too much because Dad was. It wouldn't, so there was the west side of Square, and that's where kids went. And people went out into the cornfields and did things. But
high school things, teenage
yeah.
things. Yeah.
And I was not supposed to do that. And so, and I had a high school boyfriend, and he was supposed to be out of my house in time for him to get home by curfew. So, and curfew was 10 o'clock. So that's what I had to do. But
You never violated that, I hope.
no.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting. She would tell, it's clear that when she was a kid in Carrollton, there was a lot more shenanigans. There were more shenanigans going on there than there was in my hometown, or maybe I was locked away too much. I don't know.
Well, you lived in the country too.
Yeah, I
lived a
lived.
block off the square,
You lived right in town there.
so I could hear and see.
And I was about 5 miles out of town, out on.
One time I went to school, and it was the days of, what was the name of it? There's a, forgot the crop top. It's kind of like a crop top. So my tummy showed,
Oh, pretty revealing. Yeah.
Oh,
and I got sent home from school.
Oh, really?
That was terrible. I was
How'd your
so-
dad deal with that?
Well, I didn't really get in trouble. He just told me to, not wear that again, which of course I didn't.
Yeah.
But he let me wear short dresses, and he would take me shopping. And he didn't. I realized later it was easier for him to just say okay. And if I couldn't decide, he'd say, "Just get it." So I would get both of them. If I couldn't decide between the black and the brown shoes, get both of them, or get this or that. So I would get both dresses or both whatever it was. And then what was the other?
And you were growing up in the late 60s,
yeah.
early 70s, when
Really
things
short-
were really changing.
Yes.
The culture was really making a
Lots of
drastic
short
switch.
skirts and lots of short things, and he wanted me to be happy and me to be, popular, but yet be, a young lady. So there was a good balance there. My older sisters helped too. But one other time I was coming in an intersection, and we had the car. I got a little bang up where I hit. I don't know. I've forgotten who hit who, but and the police came, and they didn't issue a ticket though, because they didn't know who was really responsible. We were both crying, and it was terrible. So that was about the way.
Couldn't have been your fault.
No, I don't. I was distracted. Back then, you didn't have cell phones or anything. So
No.
I'm not quite sure what we were doing.
Do you remember the first car that you had?
Yes, let me think about that. It was my own car. It was a yellow Oldsmobile Starfire that I shopped for a lot in St. Louis, and it was, I think, $2,000 was 7,000 miles, or would it be the other way around? 7,000.
Probably, yeah. That was probably an expensive car back then.
Yes.
2,000 for a used car, yeah.
And it was used. And rolling windows and all that, manual everything. But an automatic transmission, because I never did drive the stick.
Yeah.
And that was my first car.
Miles, I imagine you could drive a stick shift.
I know how to drive a stick shift.
Yeah.
I could drive my dad's early about 1950 Jeep, post-war. It wasn't, an open-top Jeep. It was an actual Kaiser Willis pickup Jeep with four-wheel drive, and I was probably 4 when I learned to.
You were 4 years old when you learned to drive.
Put it in low and go faster than 2 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So I could just head across the field, and Daddy could always catch up to me if he needed to do something. Said
You were
probably
even alone?
well for a while, and I knew to turn before I hit a fence. I knew that much. I could see the fence up there, and I wouldn't drive into a cow or anything like that.
That could be a record, though, for driving at the earliest age.
Well, it helped. That's why, I learned quickly, and I actually got one of my grandpas had a real Jeep, open top Jeep, and we were out near Houston at his deer stand out on a rice farm. That's my mother's dad, and he got hung up in the mud. And he didn't know how to do that, so I was able to get it out and get it over the out of the ditch without any problem. He said, "How'd you learn that?" And I said, "Daddy taught me that." And he said, "Well, good." So
You were the hero that day.
I was the hero, yeah. So
I bet you wish you still had that old Jeep.
I'd love to have. Of course, there were no roll bars. Both grandparents had that kind of Jeep, and it was, I don't know what they really used them for, but that grandpa went out to hunt deer, and he took my uncles would also use it, But my other dad, who lived about a mile and a half down the road, my paternal grandfather also had a Jeep that when they used it to look around at the cattle and stuff like that. So, and he had a lot of land. He was kind of he had several thousand acres at one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You say your paternal grandfather. Where did the Yantas come from? What nationality is that?
Actually, my dad's side is all from Poland, but they came in 1854 and 1855 to South Texas. And my mother's side, it's a little hazier. They came from what was eventually Czechoslovakia, but I think they must have come in the 1880s or 1890s. So by the time my great-grandfather got to, I guess it was my great-grandfather, got to Texas, they, there was still a slave state. Obviously, they didn't know any slaves. They didn't speak English. They didn't plant cotton. They were just wanting to be farmers, and so, and then I guess the Civil War came around, and they said, "We're neutral, man. We don't want any part of this.
Leave us out of it.
Leave us out," and then they started expanding, and so our family's been down there since a long, like 1854, 1855.
Huh. Don't you wonder what motivated someone to move from Poland, which would have been pretty well civilized and settled, to say, "Hey, let's go move to South Texas"?
I can guarantee you what did it. The Germans.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, it's the Prussians. They scared everybody, and and it wasn't religious or anything. They weren't Jewish or anything. They weren't persecuted, but they didn't have a lot to go on. And you remember that in Poland, pretty much it's the Russians coming from the east, the Germans moving from the west. And that's what I think must have been like in Poland for centuries.
Got tired of the fighting and everything?
They got tired of fighting, and they said, we can go here. Some old priest from Detroit, who was a Polish guy, went down there and said, "Look, all this land. Look at all this. All you have to do is settle it, and they'll give it to you." The state gave it to them. So.
Left Poland to get away from the fighting, wound up right in the middle of a civil war.
Fortunately, they didn't have to fight, so they didn't. And by then, and there wasn't a lot of. Texas was kind of a minor player, I think, during the Civil War, I believe. But they were, and there's still strong roots down there.
Yeah. And Mary, what's your maiden name? Where's your family from?
Vogt, and that's German. And then my mother's maiden name is Benz, and. So,
are you heir to the Mercedes-Benz fortune?
I wish.
Oh.
And I also have diesel on my father's side.
Oh, really? Well, Ben, there's got to be a connection there somewhere.
I must be distant because I don't know the details of that. But, yeah. So, my father's family is pretty much, as I think, it's pretty much straight German. Mm-hmm. And then my mother's family had Le Père. It was German, Swiss, and French. From the Alsace of France, it was between Germany, France,
depending on who's ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
And when did they come over? Do you know?
Gosh, I never remember those details.
Yeah.
I have an uncle who put all that in, and then we have a cousin who did some of that. So it is documented somewhere along the way. But a long time, pretty long time ago, I think.
One time, years, what's that?
You remember more than I do.
Well, I'm going to tell about how long your dad's side lived. Your grandfather, he died before you were born, but your dad's dad was born like in 1860 or 61. And both her sisters were little children and probably met their grandfather. And that was 2 months or so before Lincoln was inaugurated.
Oh, wow.
So his predecessor was at Polk, I think. Yeah, James.
Sounds
Polk.
right.
Yeah, and I looked in the Bible and I said, "Holy cow, your family lives forever." It's amazing.
Live a long time.
And that's they eat such a healthy diet. Summer sausage all the time. Pork,
Got to be the genetics, I guess.
That's genetic.
That's it.
Nothing but good cholesterol.
Yeah. So as you're coming, let's get you to the high school years now. What are you thinking about your future, about the time you get to be 17 or 18? Mary, what are you thinking you're going to do with your life?
I don't know that I thought too much. I did know I wanted to go to college, and I had a sister. Both my sisters. One sister they were doing English and English literature, and one sister was I guess, by then dating a doctor. And so I began to think about healthcare. And so that became an interest. Of course, Dad kind of wished and wondered that any of us would go into law, but I just didn't have that kind of affinity for all of that sort of thing. So that's when I thought about nursing. And Barbara, my older sister's boyfriend, had gone to Vanderbilt, and so that's how I ended up applying to Vanderbilt. And I thought I didn't want to stay around the Midwest, I thought Illinois and Chicago and St. Louis were all kind of boring. So I didn't know much. I thought, well, this seems interesting, so I went down there.
Well, Vanderbilt's a serious school. You must have been a straight-A student, huh?
Well, I was a good student, as I said, in Carrollton. I was a big fish in this little pond, and I did really well. I go to Vanderbilt. Everyone had been doing very well, so it was challenging, very challenging.
How'd you do at Vanderbilt? Well,
I did fine, but it was I had to work hard.
Yeah.
But you work hard and play hard there, so it was.
Did you like Nashville?
I like Nashville. It's really a great city in that it has good music, and it's not just country music. So I learned a lot about music and enjoyed the people and all that.
Tell Doug what used to say about on every corner.
Well, on one corner there'd be a bar with a musician in it. Another corner there'd be a church.
So everywhere's a honky-tonk and a church adjacent.
Just depending on how your life goes, I guess.
You've got to go from one to the other.
And Myles, what were you thinking after the high school years?
Actually, I wanted to be I was a physics major in college. I wanted to, honestly, back in the time, I was thinking, boy, it'd be kind of cool to work on a hydrogen bomb project, which
you're thinking big picture here.
Big picture, which is politically incorrect. And
this is obviously after it had already been dropped.
It had already been
after the war. After that,
the atomic bomb and then the hydrogen bomb tests until they stopped doing them, other than underground. And it was my senior year in college. I decided, you know what, I don't want to go to graduate school. Those because physics majors are really, I mean, the graduate students are brilliant. It's scary. They're like neurosurgeons or something. So I said, maybe I should just go to medical school. I had a cousin 6 years older than I was a psychiatry resident, and I had another cousin a year older than I was going to went to medical school down in Dallas. And I said, maybe I should do that. So
you thought medical school would be the easy way out.
It was, honestly, I had never thought about being a doctor until I had to apply for the medical college admission, the MCAT, and I got that in the mail. Had to be postmarked by midnight, and I got it at the post office. It went in, and I did well on well enough that I was accepted, and then I had to take certain courses, biology courses that I didn't have earlier on. So I was like way overtrained in something that I would never really need. So I got fed a lot of biology and biochemistry and things like that all at once, and then started medical school and never really looked back. I've never regretted not going and working on that hydrogen bomb project.
Yeah. What if you had missed a deadline for your MCAT? What then?
I'd probably been, I'd probably be arrested for protesting some nuclear power plant or something, up in New Hampshire or something. No, I don't know.
How hard was med school?
I mean, it was good. It was hard. You have to study a lot. I did well, but there's so many smart people. I was always there. I mean, the guys that work hard, guys and gals that are just really good. And, other medical schools like here at WashU, I knew a lot of the students there. They'd be on my team. And I said, those people were really smart. And they're, most of them are pretty well-rounded. But it was hard. But we also, they had a medical fraternity that I lived in 1 year in Galveston. And then I stayed but I moved into apartments with a roommate, and we'd cycle in and out, whatever, as we were going off to do rotations in other cities, like, whatever, to Oregon, to Portland or whatever. But there was always parties, and it was, honestly, I think of the movie Animal House. When the movie came out, of course, that was 1962, and that was college kids, so they were younger. but the same stuff happened at the medical fraternities. The only thing I never saw happen is a cow being led out of the house like an animal house.
They never got around to that.
We never got around to that. But honestly, I did see like an inflated date or some sort of mannequin thrown out from the second floor,
really?
just like an animal house.
Really?
But I didn't see anybody break a bottle of Jack Daniels over the head.
Not.
Like
or
pollution.
mess around with the dean's wife.
No. Dean
I saw
Wormer.
the movie.
Yeah, I've seen it.
So what's a typical day in med school like? Like how many hours in class and then how much homework afterwards?
Probably class starts at, for the first 2 years, it started like 8 in the morning, lectures and all that. And then there'd be probably until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And then sometimes a lot of labs, dissection labs early on, then, biochem lab or whatever. And then once you get onto the wards, that's when it gets really fun. I mean, you have some lecture, but you get to be with patients and all that and learn. That's where you really learn a ton. So your hours are different. They're a little more fluid and work harder. And then that's it. My roommate in medical school took copious notes. He wrote everything down. And I mean, he was good. And at the end of the day, I think in our placement when we graduated, I was one place higher than he was in our class.
How do you deal with that?
Oh, we laughed. He's a good guy.
So how do you decide what area you want to go into of medicine?
I used to think I wanted to be in cardiology years ago. Actually, at one point I was interested in being a radiologist, and I'm glad in retrospect I didn't do it. I wanted to be a cardiologist. I said, geez, cardiologists are everywhere. And when I was a resident, there weren't that many people doing lung disease, at least for adults. There's still, some pediatrics and a lot of allergy and all. But I decided that would be less competitive, and I was probably right. It was less competitive. And, of course, then every field expands. I mean, my field has expanded to critical care and all sorts of things. I mean, they do all sorts of invasive things and interventional things that we didn't do. So, and I wasn't really trained. I did procedures. That was the biggest fun I ever had practicing was doing procedures, like doing bronchoscopy, which is like a gastroscopy or colonoscopy, other than a different place in a smaller scope, and looking here rather than down into the GI tract or up into the GI tract. So I enjoyed doing that, and I wish honestly, if I could, I probably could still do them, but I didn't really need to, and they probably need new blood. So I retired in 2015.
Yeah. You happy about that, or you still get the itch to work every now and then?
Finally, they've pretty well quit trying to get me to do locum tenens work, to take a practice for several months while some guys on a cruise or sabbatical or something. I said,
I bet with COVID there was a need for...
I volunteered. We both volunteered.
Yeah.
I called one of our hospitals called Alt Memorial and said, if you need somebody, I'm not going to be doing... I sent it back up to maybe take care of patients in the hospital, and she volunteered there and with the county and she actually got some work. They never needed me because they were able to shoulder all the work, but people said you probably left in time, and it would have been stressful. And I always frequently call hospitals to some of the doctors that were still practicing and were being stretched thin to see how they were, and they said they're doing fine.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, see how they were up here.
Yeah, it was a stressful time for everybody.
Yeah.
We all thought we were going to die. Yeah. As soon as we get exposed to it, we were dead.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was scary.
And Mary, you went to nursing school after Vanderbilt, or while you were Vanderbilt? Yeah. And what was that like?
It was a lot. It was a lot of work. It was very stressful. We had similar kinds of anatomy and physiology and histology and labs where we dissected. It was great being at that school because we had wonderful. There was the similar kinds of things as the medical school had. We had human dissection, so we had bodies that we could find the muscles and all the tendons and everything. So I learned so much, and then going to the hospital and doing the clinicals and that sort of thing.
And how'd you get the first job?
Well, I came back and worked at Barnes, and let's see, and that's when I met Myles. And then I went back and went to Boston University for my master's. And that's when we dated more and kind of made our relationship more secure, I guess. And then, I guess that's when I then wanted to go. Then I went to California.
You went to Oakland or Alameda
I went to California
to work. By then you were a visiting nurse.
Yes, I didn't want to go back to the Midwest. So I had a sister in California, my middle sister. And I wanted to do home health. And because I wanted to be a pulmonary clinical nurse specialist. So I wanted to take care of patients at home because I saw a need for patients to stay at home rather than being in the hospital. Because people are only in the hospital for a relatively short time and they're at home for a long time. And families need to take care of the patients at home. So I called, somehow, this is like the old days, so you call the phone number and call them long distance. And I called them and I said, called the Visiting Nurse Association of Alameda County. And I said, I just started talking to them about what I could do. I can do this for you and this for you. I can do your continuing education. I can see your patients. I can speak to your physicians. I can do liaisons with your home health, with the other home health. And I just kept talking and talking. And they hired me sight unseen, and they created a job for me. And that was my first job. And I worked out there for about...
Scary to move away from...
Sort of.
From the Midwest to go out there?
Not really, because I was ready to go. And I lived with my sister for the first little bit. And then it was a little hard because I didn't have friends my age. And she was married and had a new baby, so I loved being out there with her first child and then her second child. But it was... So that I loved doing. And then we thought that maybe we were going to be we thought, well, I'm going to give this relationship a chance. So then I got on the phone again, and I called the Visiting Nurse Association of Greater St. Louis. And they did not have a pulmonary clinical nurse specialist. And I called and spoke to them, and I said, this is what I can do for you. And I kept explaining all these different things I could do, and they created a job for me because they didn't have a pulmonary person. And they hired me sight unseen also.
She's a job creator.
Sounds like it.
Job creator.
Yeah.
And I drove across the country crying the whole way because I said, I'm going back to St. Louis. And I don't want to go
No, it's
back
not the
to
greatest place. Most people don't cry on the way
Why
back.
am I going back to the boring Midwest? And for this man in my mind, I said, I'm giving it 6 months. And if in 6 months we're not engaged, I'm out of here. I didn't tell him that, but that's what I had in my head.
How did you meet originally?
Well, my older sister
Good story. This is a good story.
invited us on a blind date because she was dating this guy. She dated him kind of long term. And so we went to dinner, and I sat across my sister, and she and I talked the whole time. And Myles sat across from her friend, and they talked the whole time. And I hardly ever said 2 words to Myles. And we had a nice dinner at Annie Santa Fe, this Mexican restaurant.
Out in west, way out, barn at Lucerne.
And then at the end of the dinner, I thought, oh, well, we'll see what happens. But then he asked me to go to hear Messiah at the symphony. I thought, okay.
You went for that. You said that'd be okay.
Sure, I'd love to do that.
I had bought tickets with no date, had 2 tickets, said, she'll do.
Oh,
And she said, sure, we went. And that was good, right? Like not long before Christmas of 1977.
My first date was December 9th of 1977.
so it wasn't necessarily love at first sight, but once you took her to Handel's Messiah, that was the clincher.
I kind of knew, and I remember flying, where was I? I was flying somewhere. I remember thinking, this man, we could have a beautiful life and beautiful children, and this could be the one.
So far.
How long have you been married?
40 years.
40?
40.
Yeah, it looks like you're going to make it.
Yeah. Many of my college friends have been married over about 50 or more years.
Well,
Really?
And then, so at the end of, so getting back to at the end of the 6 months, I went over to his house. I worked in St. Louis and had an apartment, and I came back to his house. He lived in Collinsville because he was at Scott Air Force Base. He asked me to get his mail. I said, oh my gosh, I am so tired. And you're going to ask me to go to the mailbox? What you've been doing all afternoon. He had light schedule, easy with the Air Force. So I went, though, and I didn't complain. Went to the airport, and there was an envelope in there. And I got the envelope, opened it up, and it said, DM, Dear Mary, LGOT, right?
WWMY,
Well, first it's
LGOT.
whatever. LGOT, Let's Grow Old Together. WWME, Will You Marry Me? And then LM, Love Miles.
Yeah.
And then it said MFAC, My Feet Are Cold. Or something like that.
You wanted a foot rub? After all,
We better stop there.
And so then that was how he asked me to marry him. And then we called both sides of the family. He called my father first to ask permission. And
yeah.
we called the rest, all the,
Well, I don't know if it was
right?
permission or if we were just telling him.
yeah, he was kind of relieved at that point. Because
Yeah.
we've been dating a while.
Yeah. I think, actually, did I have a bottle of champagne out in that
think there's a bottle of
mailbox?
champagne
Yeah, out.
with that
It was
letter.
chilly, and I had it sitting out you didn't have to go far to the mailboxes right outside the front door. Just reach in.
Yeah,
But I
so-
thought it was pretty clever,
He was
actually.
very clever.
You were a hopeless romantic.
Oh,
I-
definitely.
Not ever. Maybe that was the one time. You caught it. It was like the solar eclipse. That was it.
And by this time, having been through med school and everything, you weren't a kid anymore. You were
No, I was
probably mid-30s.
We got married. I was 34.
Yeah.
And
I was 30. You were 28.
That was getting pretty old back then.
Yes.
Turn the clock back then.
I
They
thought
started getting married that way again now.
Yeah.
But back then, people got married in their 20s.
20s, much younger.
I
Yeah.
moved to Alton within 3 years, within 5 years, had the 3 children. And so
What was the wedding like?
we were married at the Missouri Athletic Club.
No, the reception.
Or the-
We got married at Graham Chapel at
Grand
WashU.
Chapel, because my father went to WashU, and he's Catholic and I am not. I was raised Presbyterian, and so we wanted a non-denominational church where his uncle, who was a priest, and my minister could marry us, and so that fit to work really well. It's a beautiful place, Grand Chapel,
Beautiful.
and then we had the reception.
The reception was at the MAC. That was kind of cool.
Yeah. What was that like?
Missouri Athletic
A
Club.
lot of friends and people there.
Oh, I mean, very generous people from our small hometown, and I mean, everybody wanted to give us all sorts of cool things, and
Yeah,
you know,
that was high society.
it's high
Maybe
society.
that still is,
yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, it still is.
All the
Anytime
preaching and the soul.
I went there, I was think about, your dad had been a member there.
Oh yeah.
And I had never been a member myself there. I lived too close to downtown St. Louis to get the discounted rate to be a member like he did. But we used to park there for Rams games and stuff. It was fun. It was a great place. A great place.
Oh, yeah.
Big fan. My father was a big sports fan.
Oh, was he?
Oh
He
yeah.
passed that on to you?
Somewhat, not so much. A little bit.
Yeah. Myles, you still a sports fan or no?
Yeah, I try to go to the games. I'm not nearly as big a sports fan as I used to be. We used to go to some baseball games. We had season tickets to the Rams because of her dad, but he died in 1998. We kept them going until the very end, and it was always fun. But I've never had season tickets to like Cardinal games or to Blues, and we spent a lot of. I used to spend a lot more time watching sports than I do now.
When Scott was around.
When our son was really young. I mean, he was just a sports fanatic, loved it, anything. I mean, he'd see what's the score at the English Premier League?
Oh, really? Yeah.
Manchester United versus Tottenham Hotspur.
That's what he would do when he was a little boy. He would come out to the kitchen when he was very young and make himself a bowl of cereal with milk and have gone out to the driveway to get the newspaper and be reading the sports page when he was barely 5 years old.
I think our son was the only 5-year-old that when you'd pick him up from not preschool, probably kindergarten, he went home to turn on the Cubs game on WGN, the afternoon game, hear Harry Carey. He loved that.
Oh, yeah.
He loved
Sounds like the way I grew up.
Yeah.
You better be careful with that. He'll grow up to be a local TV sportscaster. And you go, what am I done with my life?
Be his dream come true. It's just very competitive.
Actually, he was thinking about, he wanted to do journalism and sports, but
He went to Mizzou for that, but it
Oh, really? Yeah.
couldn't.
Well, it's probably a better thing. Yeah, it's not the business I would suggest for most people. So was there a big honeymoon after this fancy wedding?
yes.
Where'd you go?
We went to France for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
We lost our luggage. They lost our luggage. We flew from St. Louis, TWA, from here to to Chicago to O'Hare, and then had to transfer to what budget airline? Was it Iceland or something? We were.
You tried to save a buck, didn't you?
Yeah,
You
and
flew a budget airline.
But the travel agent was from Neiman Marcus, right?
Yeah, I had a travel agent from
gosh, yeah.
Neiman Marcus
No
here,
excuse there.
and
And we stayed at these lovely Relais
Oh,
Chateau,
yeah.
very nice hotels, and had fine restaurants. So
yeah, we had 2 weeks, no luggage, had to buy everything.
I had to buy new clothes.
Buy new clothes and
Oh,
everything.
yeah. You hated that, didn't you? In Paris, no less.
Yeah. So that was that, but it was lovely. We saw and we drove, which is the way to see things. I would not want to drive anymore that much. It's just too taxing. But it was a great trip. Yeah.
It's funny that you say they lost your luggage because they lost the luggage on my honeymoon flight too.
Really?
And every time we went to complain, they'd say, "You're on your honeymoon. What do you need your clothes for?" I said, "If I hear that line one more time."
That's Lune de Miel. Lune de Miel said, "Come on, man."
What's it called? The drink, the champagne.
Oh, they gave us free champagne all
But
the
it
time.
was something champagne framboise.
Cure Framboise Royale.
All over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Did you go to France?
No, we went to San Francisco. But they still lost the luggage there,
lost the
too.
luggage.
Yeah.
But
that's all they said. It doesn't matter. You're on your honeymoon.
Right,
So-
you know,
At least in San Francisco, you can find a clothes size that says it's not 98 or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
It's
I
like
suppose we had that.
32 or
we
something.
were looking for underwear. I said jockey underwear, and they said jockey.
Jockey. I said,
Itsy bitsy
that's a
little.
string bikini. I'm not
Oh,
going to wear
you didn't
it.
buy that, did you?
No.
Oh, good.
I'd go commando before that.
So when you came back, where do you settle? Where was the first house?
In Collinsville.
His house.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when I had a couple more years in the Air Force. Yeah, 1 more year. And then I interviewed around. I thought we'd probably move to Texas and go into practice somewhere there.
At Amarillo.
Amarillo was good.
Gerardo.
Cape Girardeau was a good place. I talked to some guys in Houston, also in San Antonio, but every place they wanted somebody who actually, down there, they wanted somebody who did training in Texas, not who grew up there and went to medical school there, but did everything else out of state. And they said, "Well, we need you to be from Texas." I said,
You
"I am."
told me when you went to Amarillo, they said, you called me, you said, well, if you were a cowboy or a
A tumbleweed.
tumbleweed, you'd love Amarillo.
Honestly, I walked down the street from the hotel with you were flying in later for that, and I looked, and there was tumbleweeds rolling across the street, and I said,
gosh.
"That's a different part of Texas from what I'm used to."
And they said, oh, it's only was it from the
45 minutes to get
To the
to Dallas on Southwest or whatever.
Symphony. I said,
That's in Dallas.
They said, yeah, you fly to Dallas and then.
And then you can be back by midnight or so. I said, "Well, I didn't want that."
But Texas pride is so strong, they wanted their doctors to be from there.
They wanted to have done their residencies and fellowships in state. I'm not sure if it's that tightly bound anymore, but so. And I said I also interviewed a Christian with some really good doctors. I think one of them, who's younger than I am, came after me, but he's still there. It's an excellent doctor. But I could have joined them, but instead I looked up. There was no full-time pulmonary doctor doing everything in Alton, so I was given the name of someone to call, and that's how he hired me. So I was the fourth person in the group, the third from a medical practice. Chet, the founder, he's intensive care. Jim, the cardiology. Then Phil was ENT, and then I was number 4 in that practice. And then we grew to about 24 or so, 25 doctors before everybody started bailing out about early 90s, early 2000s or so because of the malpractice crisis. All the OBs were leaving, orthopedic guys were leaving. So.
Yeah. But you wanted out of the Air Force.
Well,
That's pretty easy. I don't suppose there's a lot of sick people on Air Force bases.
There were a lot of young, healthy ones, but we saw a lot of retaires.
Oh,
and they're all sick. I mean, they're old people that smoked and all that, and they were a lot of lung cancer and emphysema, whatnot.
I always felt like that was a good experience for me.
Oh, it's a great experience.
Because they flew people in from all over the world with all kinds of very interesting lung diseases to Scott Air Force Base. So he saw all kinds of things, and he did all kinds of procedures on them, whereas his fellowship at the Peterbilt Brigham with Harvard had been research. So he had thought he wanted to do research. So he was doing research and giving medicines to dogs and seeing how they reacted to it and doing all these statistics and all
It's
that.
physiology stuff.
Physiology, which he found he liked working, after these two experiences, he liked working with people more so than the research. So then he realized he wanted to go into a practice versus more of a research,
And
thing.
I looked at my time at Scott Air Force Base back when it was USAF Medical Center, Scott. It's no longer, it's like a clinic or something now. But I looked at it's really good 4 years of OJT, solid job training. It really was. And I mean, I learned so much, learned to do what I was going to, the skills I would need to be in a practice. So, and I enjoyed my time there.
Did you guys ever work together?
No, we talked about it, but we never did.
No,
We
but
speak similar
that would have been the
language.
death knell. I would have been the death knell.
Not easy to work with the wife or husband.
I mean,
Yeah.
because I'm not good at taking orders.
Oh, really? I could give them.
And I'm usually pretty calm about giving them, but I think she worked in St. Louis doing her home health care, and I worked worked there.
But then I took a little time, and it was part-time. And then I did work at Lewis and Clark Community College, and I was full-time faculty there. And that was a great experience. I never expected to enjoy it so much, but that was a very important part of my career. I never intended to. I thought I'm bachelor's and master's prepared, and to work at a community college, I thought, I don't know. But that college was wonderful, and they prepared students as an associate degree, and then they could work in so many ways, and then often they would go on and get a bachelor's and a master's and do everything, or they would just do their associate degree work. And so then I was at Alton Memorial Hospital, the hospitals in Alton, and I saw these students coming in, and they're now working there, and they're in the ICUs, and they're on the floors, and they're taking care of all these people that we need to have we need these nurses to take care of.
So a lot of the men and women that you used to train in the community college at Lewis and Clark went on to finish their full RN BS at like SIU or SLU or something like that, and then a lot of them going on to get like master's degrees and whatnot. So everywhere in town, they're a little bit younger than she is with us. I'll see them and they said, "Oh, your wife, I loved her when she taught at Lewis and Clark." So it was fun.
Can you imagine all the years you spent in healthcare, all the lives you improved and saved, and
we
all
hope
the people that you've touched over the years?
It's good. I guess it could always. There was probably a little more gas in the tank. Would still do it, but it starts to run on fumes after a while, I suppose.
Well,
but it was
we direct
wonderful.
in different ways now.
Yeah,
I think we direct our helping.
she volunteers for everything.
One volunteer, and then that's the family too. So just family.
Did you have some cases where you thought this patient's not going to make it, and because of the work that you did, you saved them and they came back and lived many more years? That has to be extremely rewarding.
It was. It was great, and it was always good to know that there was probably someone, there was a really smart guy or gal on the Hill that I could send them to that would pull out the bunny out of the hat, like here at WashU or at SLU or something like that. And if I needed to transfer them, and I had a good relationship with those people. If there's something that was just way too much, it's get them to the pro from Dover.
Everyone works together.
Yeah. So that has to be a great sense of pride, though, to know that, especially as you get older, you look back and think, I kind of made a difference.
I used to like to go to conferences and see these guys. I knew they were young junior faculty when I was a house officer at Barnes, and see them, and they all still remembered me and would ask about me, and their,
His patients and their families really, really are grateful for all you did.
Well,
He was, and his staff, they loved him.
I had great staff.
He was kind, and because a lot of them were not going to make it. Cancer, lung cancer, chronic lung disease, that kind of thing. So they were grateful for all you did for them.
It's always easier probably to die of lung cancer than it is to die of emphysema.
Is that right?
goes on.
They're both the same thing, but it's just awful to watch somebody gasp when it's different, because you can always kind of treat pain with a cancer or something like that. So,
I bet your kids are proud of what you've done. Do they ever say that, or is that kind of goes unspoken?
So, yeah. Our daughter, we have our youngest child. Our daughter is a physician assistant, and she lives in Kirkwood. And she's had several different jobs in the area. And
she thought about medicine. She thought about nursing, but
we kind of thought she'd go to medical school, but she went to Northwestern and did her PA program and finished in 2015. Yeah, 2015, because then she moved. And our son is in real estate back home. And he's
the landlord, I guess you'd call him.
Like 23 homes,
25 homes. So he does a great job with all that. And their older daughter she does fitness and nutrition for all ages, but now she's more focused on pre and postnatal and intranatal. So helping women who are pregnant to be healthy, have healthy pregnancies and healthy postpartums. So she's doing a lot of that. And yes, they are aware of what we're doing. And I think they're inspiration to us, and I think we've been inspiration to them as well.
And, whenever we're visiting family or something and someone has an earache or something, I say, it's Zithromax time. So,
that's the go-to medication.
I mean, with whatever. And I said, I still have a medical license can prescribe. So, but it's only, as like when we were in Montana with your sister. So, a lot of family vacations.
Do you think your grandkids are growing up in a much different country than you grew up in? And if so, how?
She wrote down, and I said, the truth travels really fast now. And I said, that's true, but I think falsehoods travel even faster now than they did when I was young and you were young. I mean, it's, you can get if you listen to the right sources, you get it instantly. But then there's that noise of the BS coming from, that's just false information. And you have to be able to ferret that out, filter it. You fact check. Yeah. And I mean, nowadays, the world is like mostly editorializing, and it's not facts. It's not, here are the facts, It's, this is what I think.
Have you kept up with your social media profiles? You're tweeting all the time and updating your Facebook profile pictures?
I know nothing about tweeting.
Yeah.
No.
But I do have Facebook, but I only do it to see what others are doing. And I did post with the new baby, I shared with our daughter, posted, that kind of thing, and happy birthday and that kind of thing. But he has nothing to do with that. I did show him when there was something pertinent.
She shows me something from like the child of one of our nieces or nephews or something. I'll see that, but I don't do any of the social media thing. I just like to keep my life.
Our older daughter does do. I mean, both the kids do. I guess it's our younger daughter, and then they do Instagram. So I see things there. Sometimes I'll take the picture because that's how they put the picture on there. I don't even see the picture otherwise.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of do that.
Yeah, our generation kind of got in right at the beginning of the computer age, and we're trying to hang on, trying to remember the passwords and everything.
Oh gosh!
Otherwise, the world will just pass you by at this point if you don't keep up with it a little bit.
Yeah.
I have a page I call it my shush paper, and it's full of. I call it shush because it's private.
Yeah,
but it has
see those passwords.
All these passwords. I have to remember them. We just got those cameras put in on the doorbells.
Yeah.
And I had to put a new thing in there. So now I just have to write that in. New password for that. So.
Yeah. But at least you learned how to type when you were a kid.
I did. My father required us to take typing. He said, you're going to need to know that.
And my high school boys basically nobody took typing.
So you never learned to type?
I never learned to type.
You're a humming pecker?
About 3 or 4 words a minute. It's awful.
It's wonderful that he can voice text or whatever.
The voice text that made a world of difference. Actually, toward the end of when I was practicing medicine, they had a Dragon program, so you could dictate, and it would come out, and you could edit it if it caught something that was wrong or misspelled, and that really helped me out a lot because I used to dictate, into a dictaphone, and they would transcribe and type it back in the old days. But now everything is electronic health records, and so nothing bad ever happens with those, right?
No, it's all flawless.
It's flawless.
Well, how do you want your kids and your grandkids to remember you when they look back on your lives? How do you want to be remembered?
Fun, smart, loving, caring, fun, able to provide for them, which I think we've done, and I think they're doing a good job on their own. So. That's my take on it.
Good job. I think that's true. I think that also remember the values that we have and that we've instilled and that we're passing along. This is where I might get teary.
Oh, don't get teary.
No, don't get teary. Pinch yourself, as my sister used to say. My sister Kay. So just remembering the values that we passed down from our family it's not what. I'm trying to think what my father would say. It's not, I'm blanking on it, but it's kind of like just because all the others are doing it, you don't have to do it too. But it's just really, I forget what I put down on those papers.
Your dad was a stickler for the truth.
Yeah, if you're going to do it, do it right.
So was my dad, but my dad wasn't a lawyer.
But you do tell the truth, but sometimes you don't have to always tell that truth if it's going to hurt someone. But you don't lie. Never lie.
You just massage the
fudge a little bit.
Well, but and as you do, making sure that. So sometimes I soften what I say, so it's not a harsh thing to say, but I don't ever not say it. I mean, I never told the children there isn't a Santa Claus. Come right out and say, there's no Santa Claus. I said Santa Claus is love, or I would just talk about how somehow that way. So. But that's not a lie, and then so I was careful how I did things. So that kind of thing. I think there's a difference between talking about like a white lie or that's not the same thing. It's always truth, always honesty, but yet thinking about others and having a caring manner. And a caring desire to be caring for others.
Mm-hmm. Apparently,
do for others as much as you can. The golden rule was very big in our family and ours.
When I was 4, I figured that the Santa thing couldn't be real. So I confronted my mother. I said, Mom, it's called her. I think even then I called her Mother. It was always Mother and Daddy, even to his dying day. He was Daddy, and Mother was Mother. I didn't call her Mom, but I said. There's no Santa Claus, is there? And she just looked with horror. She said, your eyes were so piercing. Like, I really wanted the truth. She said, well, no, it's a concept or something like that. I said, whew, good.
You were relieved.
I was relieved, and I was in on the fix after that for the rest of the siblings when they came around.
Oh, you beat them all to it.
I beat them to it. I knew the truth since I was the oldest, and I tried to get them to be well over 4 before they learned there was no Santa, or Easter Bunny or any of those.
Well, they know now. Your grandkids, they know now if they didn't before.
Yeah.
Well, 25 or 30 years from now, fast forward to the year 2050, someone's going to pop this in and watch us on a computer somewhere. Is there a message you'd want to say to your kids or your grandkids, something that you would leave them with it's just kind of something to know about you?
Behave yourself, but not eat more chicken.
Oh, yeah, we've got our Chick-fil-A cow over here.
Chick-fil-A, the cow. Tell the truth, be honest, tell the truth, work, enjoy.
Make good decisions.
Make good decisions.
Always
make good decisions. Yeah.
Be, making good decisions, and think about what you're doing. What else did I say? I can't remember. I had some thoughtful things I said. I wrote.
but remember to have a good time and try to be generous. And
That's right. Enjoy life. Don't have to be too serious.
We've recently become more philanthropic in the last few years,
Right.
which
Give what you
is
can.
good. Yeah.
Be grateful for what you have. Be very grateful. And
Try to spread the love a little.
generous, but be conservative with what you have, and but be grateful for what you have.
Take care of your own and yourself and all that.
Family.
And then make sure the family.
Family
and then
is
help out with others,
family
which we do
first.
now.
Yeah, family is first. Friends and all the rest of it, and everything else is important to work, but that family is.
That's been the center of your life, your family. Yeah. And it worked out pretty great, didn't it? Looking back on where you were, the
Yes.
humble beginnings, and things have just gone great in your lives, haven't they?
I think probably the happiest times I remember was when we had to, when our kids were young, dance, sports with our son. Actually, the girls had some softball and all that, but the carpools, I really enjoyed all that. It gave me, running constantly, it gave me a real focus because I had to work, but I also had to be on time to take these boys or girls to whatever their games were, or rehearsals or something like that. And it made me a good time budgeter back then.
Yeah.
And plus I had a really good social network back then. And when the kids grow out, when they're older, and eventually, maybe we'll be able to do something with the grandkids, although I'm going to be pretty old.
Well, we do our best. We stay healthy.
Yeah, stay healthy.
Being healthy is important too.
Right.
So we stay healthy as much as we can within whatever confines the limits we have.
Was there something I should have asked you that I didn't? Anything else you'd like to say? Points you'd like to make?
Oh, you didn't ask me what my first car was.
Oh, I thought it was the Jeep that you drove.
No,
that
I drove, but that was
count.
the Jeep. I didn't own it. Daddy bought me a '57 Chevy Bel Air when I was like 16 or so. I think I could get a driver's license back then in Texas at 14, and you didn't need one out in the country. But he bought the used car for me, and it was really kind of cool to have a '57 Chevy Bel Air.
Oh, I bet.
And that I even took it to college, and I had it for a number of years. I think I might have had it in Galveston.
What color was it?
It was a light blue. So, and I think it was a coupe. I believe, but it was a decent car. And people used to say, "Boy, that's your first car. It's a cool car." I said, "I would have rather had a '55 Corvette."
Oh God, weren't those beautiful?
Or '53 Corvette.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would have cost money.
Yeah. And it's amazing that people trusted 14-year-olds to drive back then. Can you imagine giving an 8th grader a driver's license now?
Well, oh, man.
Well, people grew up a little faster, I think.
Yeah. And, I think, back, my mother learned to drive a truck when she was 12. She had to they were like, not 18-wheelers, but they were big. They were hauling rice from her father's rice farm to a dryer, and they'd take it to mill. And when she was 12, that was 1930-something, she needed to get a driver's license. So apparently my grandfather took her to the county courthouse in, Columbus, Texas, I think it was, and told the judge, "I'd like to get my daughter a driver's license." I said, "Well, so Mr. Charlie, she's only 12. He said, "Here's the money."
No, he paid it off.
Paid some money from him. Said, "Here it is," and he wrote a driver's license.
You mean there was government corruption of some kind?
No, well, not in Texas. It wasn't Chicago, man. It worked, and she never had accidents or anything.
That's good. Yeah, she survived long enough to have you.
Yeah, to have me.
Yeah. Well, all right. If you think we got it covered, I guess we should wrap it up, unless there's something else you need to say.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. It's fun.
So many things.
I had to think about it.
Yeah, it's hard to tell your whole life in an hour and 15 minutes or so.
Right.
I could start making stuff up, but I don't want to. I need to tell the truth.
Well, that's kind of the idea of it,
Yeah.
All right. Well, you were fascinating to talk to.
Well, thank you. You're a very good interviewer.
Oh,
So.
Yes. Thank you.